Hello, everyone. Welcome to Inside the Birds Postgame Live. I'm Geoff Mosher with Adam Caplan and joined as always by Eagles Hall of Fame left tackle Trey Thomas. Gentlemen, the Eagles showed a lot of things today. One, they have clinched a return ticket to the playoffs with that win that they had. And secondly, I think we can all safely say that while this is the first time in over 6 years that the Eagles and Giants played each other when both teams have winning records, the Giants are not anywhere near the Eagles echelon. Is that fair, gentlemen?
Yeah, let me add to that real quick. So I'm listening. I'm driving on my way back, and it's funny you bring that up because Carl Banks, number 58, might remember him.
Oh, very well. Yes.
Yeah. He of the Randall play back in 1991. But so what Carl said, he said the Eagles are better than the Giants at every position. Every position. He didn't mention kicker or punter. Offense, defense, quarterback, offensive line, running back, wide receiver, defensive line, linebackers, DBs. You're right, Geoff. The way you set up is exactly it. They're so much better than the Giants.
Trey, I mean, any lies told there?
No, none at all. I mean, this was just a total dominant performance this week from the Eagles, man. I mean, just across the board. They just came out there and just really showed out and just whooped up on the New York Giants for this game.
Amazing. The Eagles have now, since that loss against Washington, that is now 4 straight, and they seem to be getting better and better. Keep losing injured players in each game, and of course, we'll have to see the status of their punter, Aaron Sipos, after that very brave attempted advanced fumble that resulted in a leg injury. But you actually saw some good things on special teams to compensate, and a total outclassing of the New York Giants as the Eagles now are 12-1. Obviously, some notes in this game is that both wide receiver A.J. Brown and running back Miles Sanders go over the 1,000-yard mark in the same game, Trey. Guys don't like to share that kind of stuff in the same game. That's messed up. Someone should have taken one for the team.
But, oh, man, well, this is what type of offense that you have here, where you have a receiver that can go out there and have a 1,000-yard season, and your running back is having a 1,000-yard season. I mean, you know what? You keep running Jalen Hurts out there, he might have 1,000 yards rushing as well.
Yeah. Oh, he had 77 yards on 7 carries. So it's a full team effort. A couple of things that came up in this game that I thought were interesting that we'll get into. But the biggest thing is, Adam, you and I, and on the pregame show with Jason Avant and Greg Cosell, said the Eagles sometimes get their identity confused by people. People think that they're a half run, half pass team because they can do both very well.
No.
Typically, they come out throwing. And even though the Giants have one of the worst run defenses in the NFL, Nick Sirianni and Kevin Patullo and Jeff Stoutland and Jalen Hurts all came out and said, who cares? We're doing what we do really well, doing what we do probably better. We're throwing the ball. And they came out, and as we said, with the Giants' inability to score, season-long inability, if you can get up early on them, that's why you go through the air. And that's exactly what we saw.
Yeah, look, the plan was obvious. They were coming in throwing, and it was raining, but as we talked about in the pregame show, light wind. It was not a heavy rain. It was just steady, but it wasn't like a monsoon, and they were able to throw, and they kept throwing, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the Eagles have to be up there in shot play attempts in the first half of games. They just keep doing it, and it was one of these things that I just felt like if the Giants could have kept it competitive, Hurts had, I think, 22 attempts in the first half. He might have had 50 attempts. They just knew that the Giants had no answer. The Eagles' protection, the story of this game was protection and execution. Yes. Protection was incredible. Absolutely incredible. I know that Hurts took some sacks, but they were so inconsequential. It absolutely had no bearing on the game. And they just absolutely dominated. And then the second half, they ran the ball down their throats, which is what we thought they would do. And it was just one of those games. You know, I said to you, I told you once they went up 14-0. No, I said at 7-0. I said if Eagles score here, the game's over.
Yeah,
the Giants don't have the personnel to compete with anybody really when they're down. And this is just as Trey set up very well. This is complete domination. And look, it's to the point now. You know, I know they got to play the Bears next, but it's what they're going to do against Dallas. That's when you're going to see where they're at.
Yes, and obviously, by the way, the Eagles also helped themselves out by winning. Minnesota lost. So the team that was really sort of keeping the Eagles, obviously having to win to secure the number 1 seed, they go down, and the Eagles gain a game over them. Dallas wins by the skin of its teeth. So, hey, listen, the Eagles beat Houston by the skin of their teeth as well. All you got to do is get the W. That's all that
But not
matters.
like this. Not like
No,
this.
not like that. I shouldn't say
Terrible
skin of
joke.
the teeth. It was just a close first half. Trey, I want to go back to what Adam said because we probably spent 20 minutes on the pregame show, and I even had the production fellows create an overlay called Protection Program because we know that when you're going up against a Wink Martindale defense, what he's going to try to do best, and he got a few, is figure out breakdowns in your protection schemes by the way he aligns, the way he blitzes, the way he confuses. He had a few that worked, but in general, for the first 2 or 3 drives, why were the Eagles so good at picking up what the Giants were trying to do?
I mean, they were really on point. I mean, you saw where Kelsey and they were just making their calls. Everybody was on the same page, and Jalen did a good job of getting rid of the ball. I mean, when you go back and you look at first drive, 13 plays, 11 of them passed. I mean, it was just a total. I mean, he was getting rid of the ball. Excellent timing, excellent execution. Knew where he wanted to go, and I mean, this offense was just steady and consistent right down the field for a touchdown. And that's what you're looking for out of this offense. Now, you're going to have breakdowns from time to time throughout the game, but I think overall the offensive line did a really good job of just knowing who they needed to take care of, and the running backs as well, because they have to be in on some of those protections also.
Absolutely. And then we also, as you're mentioning, saw this great marriage, right, between when the protection holds, and they didn't have to hold long because I thought the whole offense and Jalen Hurts were really prepared for the variety of blitzes. If you go to the first drive, which ends on the 3-yard touchdown to Miles Sanders, I believe, it was a 3rd and I want to say 9, 3rd and 6, something like that, 3rd and long, and Jalen Hurts hit Devontae Smith on a nice quick out with 30 draped on him. It was a cover 0 blitz. Everything was perfect. It was all in synchronization. The protection was there, the ball was out, and it was well placed. This is another thing what we talk about with Jalen Hurts. That ball was placed where only Devontae Smith could get it because Darnay Holmes had really tight coverage, and that's something that we keep seeing from Jalen Hurts week after week, the ball placement.
I agree. His ball placement was really good. I mean, and I'm sorry, that first drive was 15 plays. I was looking at the wrong set of drive because their next time up was a 13-play drive. The first drive was 15 plays, just total domination, man. But then I thought that even the one play where you caught Miles Sanders on the sideline, that was just beautiful ball placement. Yeah. When you had Smith in the end zone where Smith just didn't drag his foot. I mean, just beautiful ball placement where he's putting the pass exactly where it needs to be for his receivers to go out there and make a play.
And you can't do that without great pass protection. The pass protection was just beautiful. Oh, my God.
Yes.
It's a perfect marriage, as you said, about protection. Yeah. And a quarterback is super accurate right now.
I did have some concerns only because, guys, last week, the Eagles at home were so jumpy. All the false. I thought a little bit, some of that was fluky. Obviously, I didn't expect them to have, 10 to 12 penalties today against the Giants, but you're on the road. I didn't know if the silent count would come in play, but just coming off a strange outing like that, I thought there would be concern on how they would handle all the different men at the line of scrimmage that Martindale likes to throw. But honestly, as good as the protection was, I really think Jalen Hurts also had a lot to do with that. The touchdown he threw to Devontae Smith that made it 14-0. That's their second drive. Now we can debate sort of the probability of that being a touchdown or even a catch, because while Smith put a nice double move on Holmes, the safety Love came across there, and depending on what angle you look at it from, it looks like it could have been picked easily or at least batted down. Love did not make a very good play on it, but that allowed Devontae Smith to then finish it off for a touchdown. But that's the kind of thing we talk about with ball. Maybe you got a little lucky, you need that a little bit, but ball placement on that particular play was as good as it can get. Did you think, by the way, Trey, did you think that was a risky throw when you watched it?
You know what? Yeah, because the safety was a little late. But I mean, again, 9 times out of 10, that ball is overthrown and it's an interception. Mm-hmm. But instead, Jalen Hurts puts that ball exactly where it needs to be. And then now you got Smith running it in for a touchdown. I mean, right now, man, Hurts is just playing out of this world. And if you can't have him as the NFL MVP right now, I don't know what you're doing.
No, it's funny. We had that conversation before the game. We were sort of discussing the Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, conundrum here. They're both having great years. But I mean, a game like this from Jalen Hurts, it just continues to stamp the candidacy pretty good. It's going to be an interesting decision for voters at the end. I want to go back to another thing. Dallas Goedert. The first game without Dallas Goedert was the Indianapolis game. And we all talked after that game about them needing to figure some things out, getting more guys involved, running backs in the passing game, different tight ends involved. And the last 3 games, I can't do the quick. Well, let me
4 for 44.
Well, they had 75 points going into today, and you add another 50 would be what? So it's 123 points in their last 3 games.
How many?
Doing okay. 123 if my math is correct.
In 4 games or 3 games? 4 games.
3. No, 3.
Over
3
30
games.
points a game. My goodness gracious. And the tight ends the last 2 weeks have gotten involved 4 for 44 today. In fact, Calcaterra in the first 2 drives had 2 catches. Those were the 2 that he had. Yeah, it was just and the crazy thing is, folks, don't get lost in the sauce on the passing attempts. In the first half, they had 24. They still ran for 253.
Yes, it's amazing. It's amazing how they are able to just shift from one facet of their game to another. What a marriage of running and passing. So Calcaterra, we mentioned him. I think that as a rookie, Trey, I'm sure you understand that you got to earn your stripes. You got to earn your time. He's a guy who's known as a pass catcher. He's gotten a few snaps more since Goddard went down to catch some passes. Today, you saw him on the field. It looked like more than normal. I don't know. I'll have to see the snap count. But then you also saw him make the lead block on the Miles Sanders 40-yard touchdown. It looks like he's learning that to get on the field, he's going to have to get stronger, diverse, and be a willing blocker. He's going to have to get stronger for next year, but do you see a willing blocker now more than maybe when he first saw him?
It doesn't matter if you're willing or not. You're going to have to, if you want to be on that field, that's what you have to do as a tight end. And I think that he's definitely accepting that role, being able to get out there and have to go out there and run. Like, you have to do the dirty parts of the game. I mean, you can't always just sit out there and expect to catch you some nice 6, 7, 10-yard routes and get into the end zone. Sometimes you got to go out there and you have to move some people as well. So that's all part of your position. So I think that he's definitely accepting that role and he's getting it done.
Adam, how, as we wrap up the offense here, because there really isn't much more to say. It was such a clinic, but Boston Scott scoring a touchdown against the Giants had to be, if you're a betting person and there was a prop on it, I mean, it probably would have been the easiest bet you could have made.
Yeah, he guy's amazing. What a kickoff returner he has. And it's funny to hear the Giants radio team just criticize, because they're telling the truth. They're like, the Giants special teams have been terrible today. Because usually, we talk on Inside the Birds about how bad the Eagles special teams have been. Last 2 weeks, pretty good, except for the block punt. But I got to say one thing about Miles Sanders. He's taking what's there. He's not trying to break a lot. The issue with him is he try to break the big run. He's able to get the second level now by going where the block is. And he's just a complete back right now. And now he's got, 11 touchdowns? Or 12? Did he score 2 today?
Yeah, 2 today. Yeah, the 40-yarder and the 3-yarder. Yep.
This is crazy.
First 1,000-yard season, first double-digit rushing touchdown season, and by the way, he's hitting free agency at the end of the year. Exactly. What a great time for Miles Sanders.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a quick break to hear from our friends at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook.
Game night for me is every night. At the place where I meet up with the guys, grab a cold one, and watch the big game on the big screen. So whether it's the money line, the pass line, or a parlay, I'm in it to win. This is my city, and this is my place.
All right, big thanks to our friends at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook. That is the host site of Inside the Birds pregame live, and of course our watch party that we had there. Adam Caplan and I got to talk to the fans at the Sportsbook. It was a great time. And what would we say, Adam? We said the Eagles, the Giants are going to have a tough time blocking the Eagles front seven, especially if they get behind the sticks. And you saw that early on. First possession, they got behind the sticks, and then there was 2 sacks on their last 3 plays, and that really set the tone for the type of game it was going to be.
I got to tell you, Brandon Graham, I marvel at what he's been able to do. When we had heard in the spring that he was well ahead of schedule, he actually looked pretty normal.
Mm-hmm. I
was like, yeah, it's a torn Achilles. Let's see what happens in training camp. And then we were at training camp, like, wow, he looks really good. Let's see what he can do with the regular season. Did you know he had 3 sacks today?
Yes. 3. Do you know he has
And a forced
4 in
fumble.
his last 2 games now? That's unbelievable. But how about this? And Trey, Adam and I discussed this. There are some critics of Jonathan Gannon because he doesn't blitz. He doesn't, even if they're up by 20, he won't blitz. But the Eagles now lead the NFL in sacks, and they had 7 sacks today, 13 in the past 2 games, and 33 in the last 7. What we talk about is the fact that, yes, he doesn't blitz that much, but A, he doesn't have to, and B, I think this is the under-discussed part. He doesn't run a static front at all. They twist, they stunt. He's moving Hassan Reddick around here and there to create different mismatches. Obviously, what he's doing is working from a pressure generation standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. When you can sit back and say, all right, my front 4, my front 5 can get home, that makes your job a whole lot easier as a defense coordinator. Then you don't have to worry about mixing the blitz all the time. You might throw in a couple of run blitzes when you have some of those bigger running backs that you have to deal. Secondary, the best secondary in the game right now. So you can just let your front 4 go out there and eat. And they are not, they're not leaving a lot left on that table because these guys are out there hungry and they're getting after those sacks.
You surprised to see what BG's doing at this age coming off that injury?
You know what, man? BG is just playing out of this world right now as well. Like when you go back and you look, BG and Kelsey, 2 guys that you thought like, all right, this might be their last year, are just going out and just balling. Even Fletcher Cox now, his game is elevating towards the end of this. So I mean, you're starting to look at some of the older guys on the field that are really taking ownership and really going out there when they could just say, all right, you know what, I'm going to mail it in. No, they're going out there and playing their best football right now.
There you go. All right, Trey, we know you have a commitment to get to with your son, the football banquet. Enjoy yourself. Thanks for joining us. Adam and I are going to continue and pick it up the rest of the way. Have a great one.
Yeah, man. I don't know why they schedule a football banquet on football Sunday. I'm sitting there watching the game at the table and everybody's eating. We're having awards and everything, man. I'm like, all right, I got to get out. All right, dude. Hey, appreciate y'all, man. I'll talk to you soon.
See you next week.
Got it. Yep. All right. We'll continue on.
Right.
This is one of those games again where you look and it's like, wait a minute. Jalen Hurts had 77 rushing yards. Saquon Barkley had 28. Jalen Hurts has outrushed Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, and some other running backs. Did he outrush Derrick Henry? He might have also outrushed Derrick Henry. It's kind of crazy, but actually, Adam, that's just speaking to what the Eagles have been doing defensively now. The leader for the Giants in rushing was Tyrod Taylor with 2 long scrambles.
He got it late in the game with that 32-yarder. Our job's not to nitpick. Our job's to tell the truth and find things that the team could improve on. I have a hard, other than, okay, they had a special teams gaff on the block punt, and unfortunately Sipos hurt his plant leg, his left ankle, and it doesn't look good there. I mean, the guy got hurt, so they're going to have to look at getting another punter. But it's really hard. I don't know what I could say. I mean, looking at my notes here, Hurts was on point. Protection was outstanding. The sacks are completely inconsequential and nothing to do with the game. They could. I'm not joking when I say this. 50 points. They could have scored 60. The Giants had no. Folks, the Eagles weren't, because when you get up, players will tell you this. When you get up big, and coaches will tell you this too. It's hard to unless you're pushed. It's hard to play with the same urgency when you're up big at the half.
Yes.
But they still. It's not like they were doing earlier in the season where they wouldn't score in the third quarter. Maybe the other team would come back. No, folks, they scored 24 points more. They scored back 20 from the first half, 20 from the second half.
I think after watching this game, and I know that the Giants are dealing with some injuries too. They should have players that help them in the first month of the season, like a Xavier McKinney, who are not helping them right now. Obviously, they're getting nothing out of the wide receiver that they signed from Galladay. So, and then they also had injuries to Sterling Shepard and some other guys, and Wan'Dale Robinson. So I know it's not like this is the team that won 7 games already, but I will say, having watched this game now, I am even more impressed with the job that Brian Dable, Mike Kafka, and Don Martindale have done with this group, because I'm not sure with their personnel right now, I don't know how many more games they're going to be able to win. They're a tough watch at the moment.
These are Cosell line. They're a tough watch. They don't do anything really well. They're really struggling right now. And I just thought we nailed this breakdown. we talked about the issues that the Giants have in the interior of their offensive line. Boy, did it show up today. Do you know the Eagles hit Daniel Jones 12 times today? 12 times.
I do. I was looking at the stats. It's incredible.
He looks like a deer in the headlights. Boy, he gets tentative. This is the problem with this guy. He gets tentative. He's not sure what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about their schedule. They're at Washington. Remember, they tied last week. The Washington's coming off their bye. Then they play at Minnesota, so they have two back-to-back games away. We play the Colts at home. They should win. And then they're at Philly week 18. If that game means something for both teams, you could mark this down. That'll be the Sunday night game. Two huge media markets.
Mm-hmm.
It'll just come down to what the game means.
Yep.
My buddy says to me, no, they should put this. This is a typical Eagles fan. He goes, they should put the New Orleans game on Sunday Night Football because if the Eagles beat them, that they'll have a better draft pick. I just thought it's funny.
That is funny. They'll get viewership because of it. That's no doubt.
And Philly, sure, but yeah, that's a little juice for that.
Yeah, here's all the people who put hits on Daniel Jones. Graham had 3. Again, just his second career 3-sack game comes at his age of 34. Fletcher Cox 2. Milton Williams showed up. He had 2. Hassan Reddick, Kaiser White, Hargrave each had a hit, and Josh Sweat, who continues to, it's not a quietly good season because if you watch Eagles football, you realize he's making things happen on a weekly basis, but you'll never hear him mentioned with like the JJ Watts or even he probably plays second fiddle to Hassan Reddick now a little bit, but he's just so consistent.
He's a better football player. It's no shot at Reddick. He's just a more all-around player.
Definitely.
Sweat rarely doesn't have a game where he doesn't make something happen. I'm probably going to vote for him. For the Pro Bowl or whatever, the awards that I vote in 2 polls. One of them is the Pro Football Writers.
Mm-hmm.
I see the whole league and I talk to a lot of people and Sweat is just so good. It was great to hear Cosell say today on our pregame show, how great Sweat looks on tape.
Yeah.
And as you asked a great question, because remember last year when Gannon was struggling and Cox is at odds with the scheme, they started to go to some wide 9 on 3rd down, which is what a lot of teams do anyway, but they weren't doing it.
Right.
They junked the wide 9 last year,
mm-hmm.
Which we actually reported in the spring. They were not going to run it anymore at all. And they started doing it. And it really helped Sweat take off. And Cox, less 4-eye, more getting upfield, and you saw him play better. And Avant made such a great point 2 weeks ago. But he nailed this. He seemed pretty convinced that Sue and Joseph signing would light a spark under Cox. And it sure as hell has. He has been terrific.
Yes, he has. A sack, 2 quarterback hits, and also a tackle for a loss in the game. Let's shift focus to the back end. I thought there was a really interesting strategy that I actually raised about a week ago, and then we didn't really talk about it because didn't think it was going to happen. But with the return of Avonte Maddox, who played the slot and actually finished second on the team with 7 tackles, they took Josiah Scott and played him at safety and moved Reed Blankenship back to special teams. And then, of course, unfortunately, Reed Blankenship got hurt, and we'll have to see what happens with them. I thought that was an interesting move. It's a move that I had brought up to someone's attention when it, as a possibility. And they said, I sort of got the vibe that might happen. And it actually did. I think it made sense. I know Reed Blankenship had played well, but in a very limited dose there and is a natural safety, but they had actually started cross-training Josiah Scott for that position before they acquired CD Gardner-Johnson. And it looked to me like it was smooth. You got Maddox back in the slot and Josiah Scott in that hybrid safety spot.
Yeah, it seemed to work. Well, we'll see what the snap counts look like tomorrow. But the fact of the matter is when we were in training camp, we saw Scott at safety, and then they wound up junking it. It was just temporary. But it's kind of like coaches will say, well, we have this in our back pocket. So we'll try to find out exactly how many snaps he played at safety. But then here's the problem. Now, they have 4 injuries. The ones that you're concerned about would be Lane Johnson with the abdomen. We don't know exactly what that means. Is it just sore? Hopefully he didn't tear anything. We just don't know.
Yeah.
Blankenship with the knee. He never came back. Suppose with the left ankle sprain. That is his non-kicking, but that's his plant leg. And then Kyron Johnson went down early and did not return. So they'll have to sort through this. The biggest one is the big one is the punter. They're going to need a new punter. And there are some guys out there. Matt Ariza was the player who the Bills had to release because of the accusations against him. No charges against him. I'm not saying the Eagles are going to be interested, but I know this. They have a excellent relationship with the agent. They've done a lot of deals with the agent over the years. The agent gets very high character players. and they'll have to figure out what, they'll obviously, if they call the agent, they'll have to gather information legally about where the kid's at. But the fact of the matter is they need a punter, and that kid has got an enormous leg. Matt Arise from San Diego State.
Right.
But other than that, there's some veteran guys out there in the street, so they'll have to kind of figure out where Sipos is with his left ankle sprain. But the other one obviously is with Lane Johnson, see where that's one is at. But
yeah,
look, Jake Elliott's not easy to do that because it's the steps when you punt. It's one thing to have a strong leg, but that's not the issue. The issue is the particular steps that you take when you have to punt. It's all rhythmic.
Mm-hmm.
And Jake did the best that he could. What did they punt once or twice with him today? I have to look. The
first couple
punt,
times, yeah.
The first punt I know was not good, but overall they got through. This is another dominant performance. The quarterback they're going to face next week is completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Superior athlete with enormous arm strength. And Justin Fields for a bad football team who's coming off of a bye, but that is that.
All right, we're going to take another quick break to hear from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, if you happen to be in Westchester, PA, go to SkyMotorCars.com where they are. Tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get a great deal, or you can find them on SkyMotorCars.com. All right, you were talking about special teams, and obviously we have to see, as you mentioned, what happens with the punter situation. But for the second straight game, Adam, you could argue that the Eagles' special teams, which, for the first 11 games was as bad as it could be, has been the better special teams unit in the game. Not only did they get Britton Covey to go in and be the holder for Aaron Sipos, and he was able to hold on the field goals, and then you also got Jake Elliott with a couple of punts, but good returns from both Britton Covey and, of course, because it's the Giants, Boston Scott. But we're now seeing Boston Scott as a kickoff returner, and I think it's just better to have him doing that and Covey on punt. They have their roles, they're defined, and they're starting to excel in them. And, of course, the blocking was better again.
Oh, yeah, and the 66-yard run was tremendous because what happened was the block was really good, but the crease was to the left, and he hit it. And that's an instinctive move by Scott, and he had the acceleration because that was the one thing I was worried about him because he never really had the long speed, but he sure looked good there. And Covey, first couple were bad, then he broke off the 16-yarder. So yeah, you're right, they absolutely are getting better. Oh, Elliott only had the one punt for 35 yards. It wasn't great, but you know what? It's really tough, man.
I mean, he's a kicker trying to punt.
It's hard. It's a lot. Not that anything's easy, but it's easier to go from punting to kicking than the other way around because again, It's the steps which you have to do, and you saw him warming up on the sidelines there. But overall, just a dominant performance, pillar to post. The coaches have to be proud because the players executed. Players have to feel good about themselves. This is just a dominant performance. And you look at the game that they lost against Washington. If they didn't have the foolish turnovers, it's a game they probably would have won. Remember Quez Watkins on the shot play, he fumbles it for getting up.
Yep.
You couldn't make it up, the craziness of the turnovers of that game. But they're a really good team. And speaking of not beating themselves, only 2 penalties today. Only 2.
Yeah. And by the way, Eagles doing a good job over the last 2 weeks of winning convincingly without producing takeaways. I don't think they had a takeaway today. Well, they had one. It wasn't exactly a takeaway more than it was a giveaway because the Giants punter decided to illegally, kick the ball off the turf.
Well, actually, no. What it was, but no, the turnover was Tyrod Taylor turned it over to get a fumble.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. But that actually technically is a turnover on downs when the punter, even though the Eagles were getting the ball back anyway. But yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah.
But not the traditional type that they've been getting, the interceptions and fumble recoveries.
On your point, it didn't even matter at that point. It wasn't like the course of the game where it actually mattered.
Right.
But, hey, you'll take it. They just, I love when I was laughing. Carl Banks, listen to this because on Sirius, you get, if you have the Sirius package, you could hear all the radio broadcasts, and hearing Merrill and Mike going over to my friend Bob Papa and Carl. They're just, when the team stinks, when they're struggling, it's because they start feeling that way, like they're telling the truth. To hear Carl Banks goes, they're just simply better than us at every position. I'm like, this is funny to hear, but you can't lie to the fans. It's obvious.
It's a really fascinating story too within a story. I mean, Miles Sanders and Saquon Barkley went to the same school. They both went to Penn State. Miles Sanders was by far the bigger recruit out of high school from the Pittsburgh area. Saquon Barkley had committed to Rutgers, and James Franklin convinced him to come to Penn State.
Oh,
and so
I didn't know that.
Saquon did that knowing that Miles Sanders was such a big time recruit. And over time, we all saw it. Saquon became one of the greatest college football running backs you will ever see. And not just from yards, but he made plays that normal human beings do not make on a football field. And then Miles had to sit behind him for so long. And then Miles finally got his chance as a senior, and he had a nice year, and the Eagles picked him in the second round. And he did. He showed that athleticism. It's taken him a while, but I mean, you watch both of those guys run, and I think you can make a strong argument. Miles Sanders has improved more than Saquon and is a better all-around runner. He may not be superhuman the way Saquon does, but as Greg Cosell sort of explained in our pregame show, and he did an excellent breakdown of it, some of Saquon Barkley's superhuman athletic tendencies don't really lend to being a great running back all the time. He can be very feast or famine, whereas you've seen much more consistency from Miles Sanders.
He's not a drive sustainer. You cannot sustain offense with him. I'd be shocked if they brought him back. He's just not good enough. He's not. Yeah. You got to do what Miles Sanders is doing. Miles Sanders is adjusted, not changed, but he's adjusted his running style. He's not trying to break everything off or a lot off. He's just saying, okay, here's what the plays to the C gap. That's where I'm going to run. Now, my natural ability, when I get to the second level, I'll break to the other side. That he can, that you should do.
Right.
But he's running where the play is blocked. That's what's making him terrific this season. He has 11 touchdowns, not 12.
Mm-hmm.
He had 9 coming into the game, but he now has 11. He's headed for 14 to 16 after having 0 last season. I mean, this might be, folks, I don't know about you, but this is, last week everyone said it was the most complete game. Up to that point, it sure as hell was. I mean, okay, they had this one special teams gaffe. Okay, they blocked it. Post got hurt. But the fact of the matter is, this is just a dominant performance. 48 points. What was that number you said after? Since Goddard got hurt, is it 100?
No. Not it's just the first game was the 17-16 win.
Okay.
Since then, in 3 games, they have 123 points.
So wait, over 40 points. Oh,
let me just make sure I'm not wrong on this. Yeah. They had 35 against the Titans.
You're right. You're right.
No, and who did they play the week before the Titans again? It was Green Bay. They had 40.
This is crazy.
So that was 75 points going into today's game, and then they dropped. Yeah.
I wonder what the Eagles' record is for 3-game stretch: 40, 35, and 48. That is unbleeping. I don't want to curse here.
It does remind me of the 2017 stretch when they played Chicago and Denver, and then somebody else was in there.
Actually, this is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So it started on what you're. Now this stretch is going to be hard to beat. Okay, let's start at week 7 in 2017.
Okay.
At home against Washington, 34-14.
Yep.
Okay. Was that the magical Wentz game where he ran out of the scrum?
Probably. Yes.
Okay. This is Kyle Shanahan's first year in 17. They were terrible. The Eagles won 33-10. Next week, this is the Key to leave game.
Mm-hmm.
What DiFilippo told us on our for our Patreon subscribers that they went into their personnel, their coaching meeting. They said, okay, let's find the matchups. They found Keith Talib. They went after him. They were relentless. 51 points, but it did end there.
All right.
And a bye week, week 10, week 11 against the Cowpokes at Dallas. They crushed them and embarrassed them 37-9. And oh, by the way, you mentioned the Bears. 31 points. And oh, by the way, I was at this game. I called you from there. The unfortunately the Rams game when Wentz towards ACL.
Yep.
43 points in week 14, and then at the Giants 34. Now it's going to be hard to beat that. But what the Eagles are doing now is pretty special.
That 3-game span you mentioned where they beat Washington 34-24, San Francisco 33-10, and Denver 51-23 produced, in my quick math, 118 points in 3 games. So far, the Eagles have bettered that with their latest 3-game stretch here. Now, if you take San Francisco, Denver, and then the Cowboys game, which was 37-9 out of the bye, even that is 5, 6, 8, 9, 10. That's 128 points. So look at that. I mean, the Eagles are sort of keeping pace with that kind of a stretch right now.
They had 9 games of 2017 of 30 points or more. That is ridiculous. That's going to be hard to match. But when Chicago's defense is terrible, they've been awful all season under Matt Eberflus, which is surprising. Although they put up points lately because of Fields running and just being able to move the ball a little bit because he's running like crazy. He's running the ball really well. Right. And David Montgomery's playing well. Yeah. But they're a bad football team. The Eagles should do well against them. We'll see what the weather is next week in Chicago.
Yep.
And then they play the Cowpokes. But this is a pretty, like, any Eagle fan watching us has to be like, wow, this is, folks, if you're with us in 2020, they were so bad. And I remember we would do our pregame show and we go, God, we got to do another one of these games. They're so bad. It's really tough watching bad football. They're the exact opposite now. They're so good. They're so good.
Yep.
And I don't know. The Eagles are clearly better than Dallas now. How much better we'll have to see in that game. But Dallas is not a very good home team, folks.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I mean, could the Eagles really be 16-1 this year? They absolutely could. I mean, they really could be 16-1, and it's not hard to fathom at this point. And they will probably be favored in every game
in Dallas. Maybe,
we'll say, yeah, I would make if they played it tomorrow, it would probably be, they might favor the Eagles by 3, 2.5, something like that. But I still think the Eagles will be favored.
Yep, mine would be 2, 2.5. The Saints game.
Oh, that's going to be ugly.
Yeah, what a difference a year makes for both of those teams.
Yeah,
particularly the Eagles.
Yep.
And the game, we'll have to see, because as we were saying on the pregame show, if the game means something for both teams, you could bet the house that'll be the Sunday night game. Remember, the league junked the rule of 5 games. You can only be on prime time 5 times. They junked that rule. They never announced it. They just junked it. Never told anyone. I have a language. It's kind of vague. It's like it starts in a specific week and everything's kind of on the table. It's all about TV, what the fans want, what they think the fans want for TV ratings. And but it's pretty impressive. And the Eagles now, I think, I have to double check. Sirianni's record on the road is phenomenal as a head coach. I think it might be like 11-3, 12-3.
Yes, been very good in his career. Yeah. All right. So the next Inside the Birds podcast will be Wednesday morning. It'll be our film review podcast, although I have a feeling that the injury intel and maybe transaction intel will be a little bit more whetting to the appetite than going through the carnage of this obvious Eagles win. I think everybody pretty much saw for their faces what happened. But we will have some really good stuff, schematic stuff, and some of the things that you couldn't capture to the naked eye. It's going to be fun.
No, I can't wait to find out exactly what they did, what they changed up defensively.
Yeah.
What the naked eye can't carry. I want to see we know what their game plan was. It was obvious from pillar to post. They were throwing the football, but I want to see the run scheme. Yeah. I can't wait for this show. We're going to have a lot of interesting stuff.
Yeah. And by the way, the way the game started, I thought that Devontae Smith was going to have the kind of game that Justin Jefferson wound up having, which is like, what do you have? Like 17 catches for 220 yards or something for the Vikings in that loss. But he was targeted 7 times on the first 20 throws by Jalen Hurts. If you can do the math on that, that's a lot of targets right there in proportion wise, but the rest of the game didn't sort of follow suit that way. Nonetheless, we will break it all down Wednesday morning on the next Inside the Birds podcast. I want to thank our guest, Trey Thomas, who joined us today. And so for Adam Caplan and Trey Thomas, I'm Geoff Mosher, and we thank you for watching Inside the Birds Postgame Live.